Hi, everyone. Tony Costa here from Toronto Apologetics. So glad that you could join us. It's good to be back, but just been doing a lot of traveling, teaching, and training, and doing some evangelism out of the country. So it's good to be back, and also glad to be putting out these videos. So today I wanted to talk about the breakdown and collapse of the West, not just the United States, but also Canada and parts of Europe and the United Kingdom, including Australia and New Zealand. Just want to mention, just as we start this video, just want to mention my book, No King But Christ, The Collapse and Bankruptcy of Secular Worldviews. In this book, I deal with a lot of what I'm going to be discussing briefly in this video. This book goes into deeper detail on the issues that I'm going to be addressing. So, No King But Christ, The Collapse and Bankruptcy of Secular Worldviews. And in this book, I deal with various and sundry matters. I deal with God as the rightful sovereign. I deal with God as the basis of moral absolutes and the absolute moral lawgiver. I talk about worldviews, the clash of worldviews, the issue of sexual identity, um, the issue of truth, the battle for truth. Is there such a thing as truth? And many other subjects that I think will avail you. And this is a great book, by the way, for Bible studies. If you have Bible studies at your church, Wednesday nights or whatever day of the week it may be, this is a great book to read. And you could read through it piecemeal, that is part by part, slowly. And it's a great book. It is academic, but not overly academic, and it's also available for the laity. That is to say, it's not geared towards a primarily academic audience. So what I want to talk about is part of this collapse and bankruptcy of the secular worldviews is that these views, these secular relativistic worldviews, cannot stand the scrutiny of objective truth, objective criticism. It cannot stand. And that is why those who hold to various subjective and secular worldviews, you will notice that when they are challenged, or when you meet them on the street, or if you meet them at a protest and you try to engage with them in a logical fashion, most often than not, they will hurl ad hominems at you. They will attack your face, your person. They'll make fun of your skin color, or they'll attack your faith, and they will throw all these ad hominems at you, or they will just start screaming or yelling together in unison some ridiculous, brainless mantra that they keep repeating over and over again. Um, and that's because that there is the moment you deny objective truth, there is no consistency. Truth is always consistent with itself. And so many of those who hold to secular ideologies today, when they are scrutinized and when they are closely questioned, you will notice that many of them just lose their patience, or they get angry, or they just walk away. And I've seen that happen many, many, many times. And so that's where I think this book would be great. Now, an example of the moral decline that we are seeing in the West, I'm going to give you an example of that. And that is, of course, here in Toronto. And again, let me just say, folks, that what I'm going to share with you, the viewer discretion is advised. Um, if you have children, please make sure that they're not present with you um, during the clip that I'm going to be sharing with you. So please, again, for the sake of the children, if they're with you, please make sure they're not present with you. So viewer discretion is heavily advised here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you a clip, a clip from the Pride Parade that took place in the city of Toronto. And what I want to do is I want to share with you um, the fact that here in Toronto, these folks who identify with the LGBTQ community, um, these folks were walking in a major intersection in the city of Toronto. One of them is Yonge Street, that you could see there. Yonge Street is one of the major street arteries in the city of Toronto. And you'll notice that some of the people here are walking stark naked. They are completely nude. Some are wearing shorts, but men and women are walking about nude. And so here you'll see some signs. The human skin, the human skin is not a sin. In other words, everyone should walk around naked. Another one at the back says nude is not lewd. Of course, what God has to say about that, of course, um, is the exact opposite. But what you'll notice here, I'm going to play this video, and please, once again, your discretion is advised. And so we've tried to, in this video, the person who posted it tried to blot out, obviously, the people's genitalia. Now, this is, again, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, major street. You see people lined up on the sides, and in amongst these crowds, you have children. And so let that sink in. You have children. Now I'm going to play this video, and then afterwards I'm going to make a comment, or a couple of comments rather. So let's take a look. It's only 24 seconds long. Okay, so that's enough of that. All right, um, so this was in Toronto. When I was in London about 2 weeks ago or so, in London, England, I saw people from the LGBTQ community writing down major streets downtown in London, London, England, riding down on bicycles, completely naked, men and women, completely naked. Now, you're probably watching this and you're probably asking yourself, where's the police in all of this? Where's law enforcement? You know, I remember back in, I think it was the early 90s or so, early to mid 90s, when the pop singer Madonna was playing at what was known as is known as the Sky Dome. It's now the Rogers Center, where the Toronto Blue Jays play, downtown by the CN Tower. And the police had warned her in advance before her performance, before her concert, that in some of her songs she would imitate sexual lewd practices. That she would just imitate them. It's not that she was stripping naked on stage. It's not that she was planning to disrobe on stage, but because some of her acts involved sexual lewd um, positions and imitations of various sexual acts, the police warned her that if she were to imitate any of those sexual lewd acts, they would arrest her. They'd come on stage in front of hundreds, probably hundreds of thousands at least, of people, and they would arrest her. And during the concert, they were there, front stage, right in front, right in the front rows. The police were there to watch her. They got a free concert. So the Toronto police got a free concert to watch Madonna, and they were there. They were ready to do what? To enforce the law, which is their job. That is what they have sworn. They have sworn to uphold, at least in Canada, I'm talking here about Canada, they are sworn to uphold the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And also, they are sworn to uphold and execute the Criminal Code of Canada, which includes the acts of committing lewd acts in front of children and people under the age of 18 or the age of adolescence and so forth. So that was back in the 90s when the police were actually serious about doing their job and keeping their oath to the charter, what Americans would call the Constitution. And so the police were ready to arrest her just for imitating a lewd act. And what you just saw was far worse than that. You saw naked men and naked women walking in public in a major street in Toronto with children in attendance. No doubt, I didn't see them, but I know, and I've been told that children attend these with their parents. Now, and this shows how far we have fallen, how far we have fallen in terms of morals and decency. Now, why do I say this? Well, I'm going to read a portion here. I'm going to read a portion here from what is called the Criminal Code of Canada. Now, to those who are not Canadians, the Criminal Code of Canada is a federal code. It covers all of Canada in terms of the execution of law by the police, the enforcement of law. And so the criminal code tells you what is criminal, what acts constitute criminal offenses, and what their penalties are. So this is a federal document, applies across the country of Canada. So in that code, there are many, many sections to that code. And what I want to do is I want us to look at, I want us to look at the section, part 4, and you could find this online. Just look up Criminal Code of Canada. And in part 4, which is part of section 172 of the Criminal Code of Canada, there's a heading here called Sexual Offenses, Public Morals, and Disorderly Conduct. And they talk here about offenses tending to corrupt morals, and they talk about the idea of luring a child for sexual purposes. And it talks about the penalty for those who plan to lure children for immoral purposes. It's all set out there. It gives you the age limits and so forth. It tells you about the punishment for those who commit these crimes. And then you have a section here on disorderly conduct, section 172.2.1, agreement or arrangement, sexual offense against a child. And so there it goes on to say, again, what constitutes sexual offense against a child. Notice the punishment. The punishment, everyone who commits an offense under subsection 1 is guilty of an indictable offense and is liable to imprisonment for a term not more than 14 years and to a minimum punishment of imprisonment for a term of 1 year, or is guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction and is liable to imprisonment for a term of not more than 2 years, less a day, and to a minimum punishment of imprisonment for a term of 6 months. Now, it goes on here to mention indecent acts. Well, what is an indecent act? Everyone who willfully does an indecent act in a public place in the presence of one or more persons or any place with intent to insult or offend any person, anyone who willfully does an indecent act. So this is what they were going to get Madonna under this part of the law. Whoever does an indecent act in public in the presence of one or more persons, what is it? They're guilty of an indictable offense, liable to imprisonment for a term of not more than 2 years. So that is the section that they were using against her. Now look at this one, section 173, subsection 2, under exposure. Every person who in any place for a sexual purpose exposes his or her genital organs to a person who is under the age of 16 years is guilty of an indictable offense and is liable to imprisonment for a term of not more than 2 years and to a minimum punishment of imprisonment for a term of 90 days, or is guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction, is liable to imprisonment for a term of not more than 6 months and to a minimum punishment of imprisonment for a term of 30 days. So, exposing your genitals, your genital organs, to a person who is under the age of 16. So if there's children in that parade and they exposed it for, I mean, what were they exposing it for other than sexual communication of some sort? To say, I'm all for this. I have no shame in showing my genitalia in public. They're not posing for an artist to paint a picture of them. They're walking stark naked in front of people and children. And many of those children would have been under the age of 16. So what did the police do in this case? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. So if you make an oath to uphold the charter in Canada and to execute the Criminal Code of Canada, and you don't do what you've sworn to do, you are in dereliction of your oath. You are disqualified. And if you do not uphold your oath, then there are laws of treason and other laws pertaining to punishment, discipline. But of particular interest, I want you to look at Section 174 of the Criminal Code of Canada, which covers nudity. So, Section 174, subsection 1, everyone who without lawful excuse is nude in a public place. Last time I checked, the streets of a city are public place. Yonge Street in Toronto is a public place, as we saw in the video. Everyone who, without lawful excuse, is nude in a public place, like Yonge Street, or is nude, let me get that here, is nude and exposed to public view while on private property, meaning if you're in your house and you are exposed, people outside can see you in public, in your private property, nude, whether or not the property is his own, is guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction. So here you have one who is nude in a public place, or someone who's nude and exposed to public view while on private property, whether it's their home, their workplace, whatever it may be. They're guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction. So if they're guilty of walking around nude in a public place, why didn't the police execute the law and arrest them? Why? Political correctness? Is that what they swore to uphold? Political correctness? Do you see what is happening here, folks? There's disregard for the law. Do you wonder why Canada has become such a lawless country? Well, if the police don't even respect the law and enforce the law, why should citizens? And now we hear about all these break-ins, these home invasions, people breaking into homes, stealing their cars, the police telling people to leave their keys at the front of the house in case they break in, therefore emboldening these criminals. We have become a society of chaos. There's no law here. And the motto of the Toronto Police is law is to serve and protect. How? How are you serving and protecting when criminals are having a heyday in Canada? Why is that the case? Because there is a moral degradation. It's no longer about truth. It's all about political correctness and what rules the day. So when a police officer sees a man or a woman walking nude in a public place, they ought to be arrested for nudity, indecent exposure. But they're not. But if someone in my neighborhood would walk around on a street like that, they'd be arrested. But because this is a certain parade, well, we can't touch them. Then why are you even making oaths to uphold a code that you do not hold or uphold? Why? This is why the West is falling apart. There's no more. It's no longer a lawful country that we live in. You play eeny, meeny, miny, mo with the criminal code. Well, then why do you apply the criminal code in other cases, but not in this case? Notice it also has subsection 2, section 174, subsection 2, nude. For the purpose of the section, a person is nude who was so clad as to offend against public decency or order. Right, that's, what is it called? Indecent exposure. But yet, what we just saw in that video, according to the criminal code, that was a criminal offense was committed there. But the police have done nothing. Now you can see why most people today have lost trust in the police force, and why many in the police force have lost their moral spirit. It's been dashed. It's been compromised. And folks, there's an old saying that a fish rots from the head down. It rots from the government down to the lower echelons of authority. If the head is corrupt, then everything else will be corrupt. And all of it comes down to one thing. It's an abandonment of our fundamental rights, which have been given to us by God. It's an abandonment of what the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the preamble says that we believe in the supremacy of God. Canada is founded upon the supremacy of God and the rule of law. That's the preamble. That is the introduction to the Canada Act. We don't esteem the supremacy of God and the rule of law. And where there is no law, there's chaos. No order, chaos. The law of the jungle takes over. And where there is no vision, the Bible says, the people perish. This is why we're messed up. This is why we're seeing the collapse of moral structures in the West. And this is why, again, one of the reasons why I wrote this book was because, among other things, what I just told you. There's a reason why the West is collapsing and bankrupting and giving way to Islam and other ideologies, Marxism, which I also address in this book, cultural Marxism. It's because at root level we have denied God. And as Psalm 9, 16, 17 says, at least in the King James rendering, the nations that forget God will be turned into hell. May God have mercy on Canada and on the West. And I'm speaking to you here today, July 1st, Canada's national birthday. It's Canada Day. It used to be called Dominion Day, based on the Psalm 72. The motto of Canada is from sea to sea. It comes from the Messianic Psalm about the Messianic king who will reign from sea to sea and who will have dominion from sea to sea, and his reign will be to the uttermost ends of the earth. Even our coat of arms is based on the Holy Bible. And so it used to be called Dominion Day based on that text in Psalm 72. He will have dominion from sea to sea. But then when Pierre Trudeau came to the office of the Prime Minister, the father of Justin Trudeau, one of the first things he did was he changed the name of this holiday, July 1st, Dominion Day, changed it to Canada Day. And one of the reasons was to remove it from Canada from its British English roots as well. And that is why our famous flag with the red maple leaf and the red borders, that was created later in the early to mid 60s, 1960s. If you look at the original flag of Canada called the Red Ensign, it actually bears the Union Jack on the top corner with the Canadian coat of arms. And that is what Pierre Trudeau, and unfortunately the Liberals, started a domino effect where they tried to divorce us from our British roots and English common law and so forth and so on. And of course, that all comes back to a denial of the foundations of this country, which were based on biblical principles. And that is why, if you ever visit the Parliament building in Ottawa, the capital of Canada, you will notice there are scripture verses all over that Parliament and symbols about symbols and statues of the Bible and pictures of the Bible and so forth. So, folks, thanks again for joining. I hope you found this enlightening. Once again, don't forget my book, No King But Christ, Collapse, Bankruptcy of Secular Worldviews. I'll have a link to that in the description box. And don't forget to like the video, share the video, and also to subscribe to Toronto Apologetics. It's absolutely free. Thanks again, everyone. Till next time.